3 months had passed since the warning. 3 months since the Galactic Council dismissed humanity's concerns about railgun technology. Dr. Ji-won Kim had returned to Earth, back to her laboratory where she continued working on electromagnetic acceleration systems. But she could not forget the looks on the alien faces, the certainty that their ancient defenses would protect them from anything. On Earth, Admiral Hyun-woo Park received the first reports while drinking morning coffee in his office. Strange signals coming from the edge of the galaxy, ships that absorbed sensor waves instead of reflecting them, movement patterns unlike anything in the databases. "Sir," his aide said, placing a datapad on his desk. "Long-range sensors picked this up 6 hours ago. The signals are getting stronger." Hyun-woo studied the readings. The ships were massive, but they did not move like normal spacecraft. They pulsed. They twisted. They seemed alive. Across the galaxy, Lieutenant Colonel Sunmi Cho stood at the window of the human embassy on Ethros, the Zephyrian homeworld. The crystal cities below sparkled like jewels in the purple sunset. She had been stationed here for 2 years, working to improve relations between humans and Zephyrians. It was peaceful work. Boring even. That peace ended when the sky began to burn. The first Devourer ships dropped through the atmosphere like falling stars. But as they got closer, Sunmi could see they were not ships at all. They were creatures. Living things the size of mountains with hulls that rippled and pulsed with strange light. Biomechanical monsters that had traveled between galaxies to feed. "Embassy to Earth Command." Sunmi spoke into her communicator, trying to keep her voice steady. "We have unknown hostiles in Zephyrian airspace. Repeat, unknown hostiles descending on Ethros." The Zephyrian defense fleet launched immediately. Sunmi watched from her window as hundreds of crystal ships rose to meet the invaders. Their energy weapons lit up the sky like a festival of lights. Plasma beams that could melt asteroids struck the bioships directly and did nothing. The energy weapons hit the alien hulls and simply disappeared. The bioships absorbed the plasma like sponges soaking up water. Worse, they began to grow. With each energy blast that hit them, they became larger, stronger, more terrifying. "This is impossible," whispered Ambassador Taemin Seo, standing beside Sunmi at the window. "Nothing can absorb that much energy." But the bioships were not just absorbing energy. They were learning from it. Their hulls shifted and changed, adapting to each new weapon that hit them. When the Zephyrians switched to different energy frequencies, the ships adapted again. They evolved in real time, becoming immune to everything the defense fleet could throw at them. On Morthen Prime, Major Yuna Kang witnessed the same horror from the human trade station. The Morthen homeworld was famous for its defenses, living stone beings who had turned their entire planet into a fortress. Their kinetic weapons were legendary, massive siege engines that could hurl boulder-sized projectiles at incredible speeds, but incredible speed was not enough. Yuna watched through reinforced windows as Morthen artillery bombarded the descending bioships. Projectiles that could crack moon surfaces bounced off the alien hulls like pebbles. The bioship's armor was not just strong, it was adaptive. It hardened against kinetic impacts just as it absorbed energy attacks. "Their armor is learning," Yuna reported to Earth Command. "Every weapon we use teaches them how to defend against it better." The bioships landed on Morthen Prime like giant parasites. They began consuming everything: metal, stone, organic matter. The Morthen's living stone armor, which had protected them for millions of years, dissolved like sugar in acid. The invaders were not just immune to the galaxy's weapons, they were feeding on the very things those weapons were made of. Similar reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The Aquarian water worlds were being drained dry. The photonic energy beings were being absorbed directly into the bioships' hulls. Every species that had dismissed humanity's warnings was now facing an enemy their defenses could not touch. In the Etherian command ship floating in deep space, Council Speaker Zarthol received desperate messages from a dozen worlds. The being's form flickered between states of matter, showing distress in a way Etherians rarely displayed. "How many ships?" Zarthol asked its aide. "Unknown, Council Speaker. They appear to reproduce by consuming matter. Each successful attack creates more of them." On Earth, Dr. Ji-won Kim stood in the war room beneath Mount Cheyenne, watching holographic displays show the fall of world after world. Red markers appeared on the galactic map like a spreading disease. The Devourers, as intelligence agencies had named them, moved with purpose. They were not random raiders. They were harvesters consuming everything in their path to fuel their expansion. How long until they reach the core worlds? Admiral Hyunwoo Park asked. At current speed, 6 months, replied Captain Minho Lee, studying the attack patterns. But they're accelerating. Each world they consume gives them more resources to build more ships. Ji-won stared at the tactical displays. The railgun warnings she had given 3 months ago seemed almost trivial now. She had worried about species developing weapons that could crack planets. Now they faced an enemy that was eating planets whole. What do we know about their biology? She asked. Commander Heron Yoon pulled up analysis reports from the embassy stations. They're not natural evolution. Someone or something created them. Biomechanical weapons designed to consume entire galaxies. Their armor adapts to any energy signature or force pattern it encounters. Any energy signature, Ji-won repeated slowly. What about kinetic forces they've never encountered? Hyunwoo looked at her sharply. You're thinking about the railguns. Their bioarmor adapts to patterns it recognizes, Ji-won said, her mind racing. Energy weapons, traditional kinetics, gravitational forces. But electromagnetic acceleration creates kinetic energy levels beyond natural evolution. If they've never faced that specific type of impact. The room fell silent except for the hum of computers processing endless streams of bad news. World after world turning red on the galactic map. Millions of years of civilization being consumed by creatures that learned from every attack. We need to contact the council, Hyunwoo said finally. They won't listen, Minho replied. They never listen to humans. They will now, Ji-won said quietly. Because we're their only hope. Outside in the darkness of space, long-range sensors detected more bioships emerging from deep void. The Devourers had found the galaxy and they were hungry. Behind them stretched the empty darkness where 17 other galaxies had once shone with the light of countless civilizations. Now only silence remained in those distant voids. The same silence that would soon fall across the Milky Way, unless someone found a way to stop creatures that had evolved to be unstoppable. Unless someone had a weapon the Devourers had never seen before. The emergency session of the Galactic Council met aboard the Etherian command ship, Astral Harmony, floating in the void between star systems. No planet was safe anymore. In just 2 weeks, the Devourers had consumed 7 worlds and were moving toward the core systems where billions of beings lived. Dr. Ji-won Kim sat in the observers section, watching alien delegates file into the crystalline chamber. These were not the same confident leaders who had dismissed her warnings 3 months ago. Their body language showed fear, panic, desperation. Veltar, the Zephyrian ambassador, no longer flew with graceful movements. His crystal wings were cracked from the evacuation of his homeworld. Half his people were refugees now, scattered across the galaxy with nothing but the clothes on their backs. The beautiful crystal cities of Ethros were gone, consumed by bioships that grew larger with each building they devoured. The Morthan delegate had not even bothered to come in person. A hologram represented him since Morthan Prime was under siege. The living stone beings who had survived for millions of years were dying in their caves, their armor dissolving against bioacids they had never encountered before. Council Speaker Zarthul materialized at the center of the chamber, its form shifting more rapidly than usual. When Etherians were stressed, they had trouble maintaining solid form. Today Zarthul looked like smoke trying to pretend it was a person. The situation is clear, Zarthul announced without ceremony. Conventional weapons are useless. Energy shields provide no protection. Traditional kinetic weapons are absorbed and turned against us. We face an enemy that learns from every attack and grows stronger with each victory. An Aquarian delegate spoke next, her tentacles writhing with distress. The ocean worlds of Hydros 7 through Hydros Thethene are gone, completely drained. The bioships drank our seas and left behind empty rocks. The mining worlds of the outer rim report similar losses. Added a photonic being whose light form flickered weakly. Everything consumed. Metal, energy, organic matter. They leave nothing behind. Ji-won watched Admiral Hyunwoo Park sit quietly in the human delegation section. He had been invited to this emergency session, but protocol still placed humans at the bottom of the speaking order. The youngest species would be heard last, if at all. What options remain? Zarthul asked the assembly. Evacuation, suggested one delegate. Move core populations to ships. Flee to another galaxy. With what ships? Veltar's voice cracked like breaking glass. They consume our fleets faster than we can build them, and they follow. Intelligence reports show 17 dead galaxies in their wake. Running only delays the inevitable. Nuclear bombardment, proposed the Morthan hologram. Destroy the bioships with atomic fire. Tried on Rigel Station, another voice replied. The bioships absorbed the radiation and grew larger. Nuclear weapons are just another energy source to them. One by one, the galaxy's greatest minds proposed solutions. Gravitational weapons that the bioships learned to deflect. Quantum disruption fields that somehow made the aliens stronger. Biological warfare that the Devourers simply incorporated into their own biology. Every idea led to the same conclusion. The enemy was too adaptable. Too smart. Too hungry. Finally, Zarthel's attention turned to the human section. Admiral Park, your species has observed these conflicts. Do you have any proposals? Yunwu stood slowly, his weathered face showing no emotion despite the weight of countless eyes upon him. The human fleet stands ready to assist in any way possible, Council Speaker. However, our conventional weapons appear to be as ineffective as everyone else's. Then what do you suggest? Veltar demanded, his wings creating harsh musical tones. Your people called this emergency session. Surely you have some plan. Captain Minho Lee activated a holographic display. The same image Dr. Jiwon Kim had shown 3 months ago appeared above the assembly. A railgun, simple and primitive looking compared to the energy weapon surrounding it. The electromagnetic acceleration technology we presented earlier is no longer theoretical, Hyunwoo said calmly. We have operational railgun platforms. Silence fell over the chamber. Not the respectful quiet of consideration, but the dead silence of beings who had run out of hope, suddenly hearing an impossible word. Hope. Your kinetic weapons. Veltar said slowly. How are they different from traditional projectile systems? Commander Heron Yoon stepped forward, her scientific background making her the best choice to explain. Traditional kinetic weapons use chemical propulsion or gravitational acceleration. Our railguns use electromagnetic fields to accelerate projectiles to 15% of light speed. The numbers hung in the air like a mathematical prayer. 15% of light speed, kinetic energy levels that existed nowhere in nature except inside stars and black holes. The Devourer bioarmor adapts by recognizing force patterns, Heron continued. It has evolved defenses against every type of energy and kinetic impact it has encountered across 17 galaxies. But electromagnetic acceleration creates a specific type of kinetic transfer that may be beyond its adaptive capability. May be, repeated the council speaker. You are not certain? No, Hyunwoo admitted. We are not certain. But our analysis suggests the bioships have never faced this exact combination of velocity and mass. Their armor might not have time to adapt before the kinetic energy overwhelms their biological systems. Dr. Jiwon Kim found herself standing, though she did not remember deciding to speak. 3 months ago, I warned this council about the dangers of railgun technology. You dismissed those warnings because you thought your defenses were adequate. Now those same defenses have failed against an enemy that learns from everything you throw at it. Her voice grew stronger as she continued. The Devourers have evolved to counter every weapon in your arsenal, because every weapon in your arsenal follows the same basic principles. Energy projection, mass acceleration, gravitational manipulation, but they have never faced electromagnetic kinetic acceleration at these energy levels because until now, no species has been desperate enough to build such weapons. The chamber remained silent. Delegates who had laughed at human warnings now listened to every word with desperate attention. The question is not whether our railguns will work, Jiwon concluded. The question is whether you trust us enough to try something that your own wisdom told you was impossible. Veltar spoke first, his musical voice now soft and broken. My homeworld is gone. My people live in refugee ships waiting to die when the bioships find them. If humanity offers even the smallest chance of survival, the Zephyrian Collective accepts. The Morthan hologram flickered as its signal was interrupted by explosions on the homeworld. The hierarchy agrees. We are out of options. One by one, every species in the galaxy made the same choice. Trust the youngest, weakest, most primitive race with their survival. Trust the species they had dismissed and ignored for centuries. Trust the humans who had tried to warn them about the very weapons that might save them all. Admiral Hyunwoo Park nodded solemnly. The human fleet will deploy immediately, but understand, this is not just about military tactics. This is about whether the galaxy can learn to listen to warnings before it's too late to act on them. As the emergency session ended, Jiwon looked around the chamber at beings whose civilizations spanned millions of years. Today, those civilizations would live or die based on weapons built by a species that had learned to travel between stars just 2 centuries ago. The irony was not lost on anyone present. The galaxy's last hope came from the race everyone thought was too young to understand real warfare. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace like ghosts materializing from a dream. 50 ships against 300 bio-vessels that pulsed with alien hunger. The Devourer swarm had been feeding on the mineral-rich asteroids of the Kepler system for 6 hours, growing larger and stronger with each rock they consumed. Admiral Hyunwoo Park stood on the bridge of the UES Incheon's Pride, watching the enemy through the main viewport. Up close, the bioships were even more terrifying than the report suggested. They moved like living creatures, their hulls rippling with bioluminescent veins. Some were kilometers long, grown rather than built, with weapons that looked like organs and armor that breathed. All ships, this is Admiral Park. He spoke into the fleet communications. Today we discover if our warnings were prophecy or just human stubbornness. Remember, these creatures have destroyed 17 galaxies. They have never lost a battle. But they have never faced us. Captain Minho Lee commanded the destroyer Seoul's Thunder from his position in the fleet formation. His tactical displays showed the Devourer ships spreading out to surround the human fleet. The biovessels moved with intelligence, coordinating their attacks like a hive mind. Target acquisition complete, reported his weapons officer. Railgun systems charged and ready. Hold for Admiral's signal, Minho replied, watching the distance counters tick down. The railguns needed time to build up electromagnetic charge. Too early, and the shots would lack killing power. Too late, and the Devourers would overwhelm them with superior numbers. Lieutenant Colonel Sunmi Cho observed from the tactical coordination ship Busan's Resolve. Her job was to watch the battle patterns and identify weaknesses in the Devourer formations. But as she studied the bioships through high-powered scopes, she began to understand why 17 galaxies had fallen to these creatures. They're not just ships, she reported to the fleet command channel. They're alive. Really alive. I can see circulation systems, neural networks, what looks like a digestive system. They're not wearing armor, they are armor. Commander Heron Yoon monitored the biological readings from her science vessel Daegu's Discovery. The scanner data confirmed Sunmi's observations. The Devourers were not machines piloted by aliens. They were the aliens, biomechanical entities that had evolved to consume entire worlds. Admiral, the bioships are beginning adaptive scans, Heron reported. They're studying our hull composition, engine signatures, weapon configurations, just like they did with every other species. Let them study, Hyunwoo replied calmly. There is nothing in our ships they have not seen before. It is what we will fire at them that matters. The first Devourer attack came without warning. Streams of bioacid shot from weapon organs along their hulls, followed by living projectiles that moved like guided missiles. The human ship's energy shields absorbed the attacks easily, but Hyunwoo knew that was temporary. The Devourers were testing their defenses, learning how their shields worked. Sir, the bioships are adapting their weapons, reported a tactical officer, changing frequency and intensity to match our shield harmonics. Expected, Hyunwoo said. All ships prepare for railgun discharge. Target the largest biovessels first. We only get one chance to surprise them. The tungsten rods loaded into the railgun chambers were simple things. Dense metal cylinders, each one weighing 50 kilograms. Nothing special about their composition or design. The power came from what would happen to them in the next few seconds. Electromagnetic charging at maximum, reported Minho from his destroyer, targeting solutions locked on primary clusters. All ships, Hyunwoo announced, commence firing. The railgun discharge was invisible to the naked eye. No bright beams or colorful explosions marked the moment when simple metal rods began accelerating through electromagnetic fields. But the energy readings were spectacular. Each projectile gained speed with every meter it traveled, approaching 15% of light speed in the space between heartbeats. The effect on the Devourer bioships was immediate and devastating. The first tungsten rod struck a biovessel near what might have been its head. At relativistic speeds, the simple metal cylinder carried kinetic energy equivalent to a small nuclear weapon. But instead of exploding outward like an atomic bomb, all that energy transferred directly into the bioship's structure. The result was catastrophic. The projectile punched through the bioarmor like it was tissue paper, liquefying everything in its path. Organs that had evolved to digest starships simply disintegrated. Neural networks that had coordinated attacks across galaxies went silent in milliseconds. Direct hit on target Alpha, reported Sunmi, watching through her scopes as the massive bioship convulsed and died. The projectile went completely through. Exit wound is substantial. More tungsten rods found their marks. Bioships that had seemed invincible moments before began falling apart, as relativistic impacts overwhelmed their adaptive capabilities. The creatures that had learned to absorb energy weapons and deflect traditional kinetics had no defense against this specific combination of mass and velocity. "They're trying to adapt," Heron observed from her science station. "Bioarmor is attempting to harden against kinetic impact, but the energy requirements are beyond their biological limits. The Devourers were learning just as they always did. Their bioarmor began shifting, trying to evolve protection against the railgun attacks. But electromagnetic acceleration created forces that existed nowhere in nature, except in the hearts of stars. The creatures had no evolutionary template for defense against such energies. "Target the core clusters," ordered Hyunwoo as he watched bioship after bioship succumb to the railgun bombardment. "Do not let them escape to warn the main swarm." Captain Minho Lee coordinated the attack patterns, ensuring every railgun shot counted. The human fleet was small compared to the Devourer swarm, but each hit was lethal. Bioships that had grown to enormous size by consuming entire worlds were reduced to drifting debris in seconds. "Sir, some of the bioships are attempting to flee," reported a tactical officer. "Let none escape," Hyunwoo commanded. "If even one returns to the main force with adaptation data, they will find defenses against our weapons." The battle became a systematic elimination of every Devourer vessel in the system. The creatures that had seemed unstoppable found themselves helpless against kinetic forces beyond their evolutionary experience. Their adaptive bioarmor, which had made them invincible across 17 galaxies, could not evolve fast enough to counter electromagnetic acceleration. As the last bioship died in the asteroid field, silence fell across the human fleet. They had done something no other species had managed in the Devourer's long history of conquest. They had won. "All ships report status," Hyunwoo requested. "Seoul's Thunder reporting minimal damage. All railgun systems operational. Busan's Resolve undamaged. Tactical systems functioning normally. Daegu's Discovery reporting successful collection of bioship debris for analysis. One by one, the human ships confirmed what seemed impossible. They had faced the galaxy's greatest threat and emerged victorious, not through superior technology or ancient wisdom, but through weapons that other species had considered too primitive to matter. "Admiral," Heron's voice crackled over the communications, "analysis of the bioship remains confirms our theory. Their adaptive systems were completely overwhelmed by the kinetic energy transfer. They literally could not evolve fast enough to survive." Hyunwoo looked out at the debris field where 300 bioships had been reduced to floating organic matter. Somewhere in the darkness beyond, more Devourer swarms continued their advance toward the galaxy's core worlds. But now humanity had proof that these creatures could be stopped. "Send a message to the Galactic Council," he ordered. "Tell them the railgun tests were successful. Tell them humanity is ready to share this technology with all allied species. And tell them that the next time humans issue a warning about galactic threats, perhaps it will receive the attention it deserves." The human fleet began collecting samples and preparing to jump to the next system where Devourers had been reported. Behind them, the asteroid field continued its orbit around the distant star, now enriched with the remains of creatures that had thought themselves invincible. The galaxy's youngest species had proven that sometimes the most devastating weapons come from those who still remember what it means to be afraid. 6 months after the first railgun engagement, the Devourer threat had been eliminated from the galaxy. The biomechanical creatures that had consumed 17 previous galaxies now drifted as frozen debris in the void between stars. Human fleets working alongside alien forces equipped with electromagnetic acceleration technology had systematically hunted down every bioship that had crossed into their space. The Galactic Council chambers on New Ethros looked very different from the crystal palaces of the original Zephyrian homeworld. Built from salvaged materials and human engineering techniques, the new facility was functional rather than beautiful. but it served its purpose as the place where the galaxy's leaders gathered to rebuild their civilization. Dr. Ji-won Kim walked through the corridors of the new facility, noting the changes that 6 months had brought. Human engineers worked alongside Zephyrian craftsmen, installing railgun defense platforms. Morthan stonemasons collaborated with human architects, designing structures that could withstand both traditional attacks and bioacid dissolution. Everywhere she looked, she saw cooperation that would have been impossible before the invasion. The morning session was about to begin. Ji-won took her place at the speaker's podium, but this time she was not there as a supplicant making unwelcome warnings. Today she held the position of Chief Scientific Advisor for Galactic Defense, a role created specifically for humanity after their weapons had saved everyone. Ambassador Veltar spoke first, his crystal wings now bearing scars from the evacuation of Ethros. The Zephyrian leader had aged visibly during the war. His once perfect wings cracked and dulled, but his voice carried new strength. "Dr. Kim," he began, his musical tones softer than before. "On behalf of the Zephyrian Collective, I offer our formal apology for dismissing your warning 6 months ago. Your people's foresight did not just save our species. It saved the galaxy itself." Murmurs of agreement echoed through the chamber. The Aquarian delegate raised her tentacles in a gesture of respect. The photonic beings dimmed their light forms in acknowledgement. Even the proud Etherians shifted their forms into poses that conveyed humility. The Morthan representative, no longer appearing as a hologram, but present in person now that his homeworld was secure, spoke with the grinding voice of living stone. "The Morthan hierarchy requests permission to establish joint research facilities with human scientists. We must understand this railgun technology, not to copy it, but to improve our defenses against future threats." Admiral Hyunwoo Park stood beside Ji-won, his military bearing unchanged despite the honors and medals from dozens of worlds that now decorated his uniform. The galaxy's gratitude had been overwhelming, but he wore it with the same quiet dignity he had shown when their warnings were ignored. "The technology will be shared freely with all allied species," he announced to the assembly, "but we ask that you remember this moment. The next time humans issue a warning about galactic threats, perhaps it will be given the consideration it deserves." Council Speaker Zarthul materialized at the center of the chamber, its form more stable than it had been during the dark days of the invasion. The Etherian's voice carried new respect when it addressed the human delegation. "The Council hereby establishes the Human Advisory Board for Threat Assessment," Zarthul announced. "Any concerns raised by human scientists regarding potential dangers to galactic security will be given immediate priority review. Captain." Minho Lee stepped forward with a datapad containing the latest reports from the Outer Rim. "We have established monitoring stations at 17 points along the galactic edge," he reported. "Early warning systems that can detect biomechanical signatures at extreme range. If anything like the Devourers approaches our galaxy again, we will have months rather than weeks to prepare." Commander Heron Yoon activated a holographic display showing the new defense grid. The railgun platforms installed around core worlds can engage targets at distances previously thought impossible. Combined with the adaptive bioarmor samples we recovered from Devourer remains, we have developed countermeasures against most known forms of living starship technology. But it was Lieutenant Colonel Sunmi Cho who delivered the most important news. Intelligence analysis of Devourer neural patterns suggests they were not the ultimate threat. Something created them. Something that remains in the void between galaxies, possibly searching for new targets. The chamber fell silent. Just as the galaxy was beginning to feel safe again, humanity presented them with evidence of an even greater danger lurking in the darkness. "What do you recommend?" asked Veltar, his wings creating nervous harmonics. Ji-won stepped forward to answer. "We recommend preparation for threats we cannot yet imagine. The Devourers taught us that even impossible enemies can be defeated if we think beyond conventional solutions. But they also taught us that the universe contains horrors we are not ready to face." She activated her own holographic display, showing research data from the past 6 months. "Human scientists have been working on defensive technologies that go beyond railguns. Temporal displacement fields, quantum entanglement weapons, exotic matter manipulation. Not because we want to use them, but because someday something might come that requires us to have them ready." Admiral Hyunwoo Park concluded with words that would be recorded in galactic history texts for millennia to come. Humanity has always believed in preparation for the unthinkable. We warned about railguns not because we wanted to use them against you, but because we knew that someday, something would come that would require us to use them for you. The session concluded with unanimous approval for expanded human involvement in galactic defense planning, but more importantly, it established new protocols for listening to warnings from any species, no matter how young or seemingly primitive. As delegates filed out of the chamber, discussing implementation timelines and resource allocation, Ambassador Taman Seo transmitted a message to Earth Command. Mission accomplished. The galaxy now understands that sometimes the most primitive species sees the threats that the most advanced ones miss. Humanity's voice in galactic affairs will never be dismissed again. The final scene unfolded across dozens of worlds as human engineers worked alongside alien scientists, retrofitting defense platforms with railgun technology. The weapons that had once been dismissed as primitive human theories now stood as the galaxy's primary defense against future threats. On New Ethros, children of a dozen different species played together in refugee camps, sharing stories and learning each other's languages. Zephyrian younglings learned human mathematics while human children practiced crystal singing. The war had cost them much, but it had also given them something precious: unity forged in the fire of shared survival. In the deep space monitoring stations, human and alien observers watched the void between galaxies, searching for signs of whatever had created the Devourers. The universe was vast and full of unknowable dangers, but the galaxy was no longer defenseless against them. Dr. Ji-won Kim stood in her new laboratory on New Ethros, surrounded by equipment from a dozen worlds and staffed by scientists from every major species. Through the viewport, she could see construction crews installing the latest railgun defense platform, its electromagnetic coils gleaming in the light of the distant star. 6 months ago, she had stood before the Galactic Council trying to warn them about weapons that could crack planets. Today, those same weapons stood guard over every inhabited world, ready to defend against threats that conventional wisdom said could not exist. The galaxy had learned to trust human warnings because humans had proven they were the ones willing to prepare for the wars nobody else wanted to imagine. And in the darkness between the stars, unknown dangers continued their approach toward a galaxy that was finally ready to listen to those who understood that the impossible happened more often than anyone wanted to believe. The universe was still dangerous, but it was no longer defenseless, and that made all the difference. The massive doors of the Galactic Senate opened with a deep rumble that shook the crystal floors. Emperor Kalos walked through them like he owned the universe. His forearms spread wide and his purple skin gleamed under the bright lights. Behind him, hundreds of alien senators from across the galaxy watched and waited. Today was special. Today was the day they would celebrate the end of their biggest problem. Kalos stepped up to the speaking platform in the center of the giant room. The platform was made of pure gold and floated in the air. Around him, seats filled with creatures from 847 different worlds. Some had tentacles, others had wings. Some breathed water, others breathed gas. But they all had one thing in common today. They were happy. "My fellow beings," Kalos said, his voice loud and clear through the translation devices. "Today we celebrate victory. Today we celebrate peace. Today we celebrate the end of the human threat." The room exploded with cheers. Claws clicked together. Tentacles waved in the air and strange alien sounds filled the space. Some creatures shot colorful lights from their bodies. Others made musical sounds that meant joy on their worlds. Admiral Voss stood up from his seat. His green, scaly skin caught the light as he moved. He was the greatest military leader in the galaxy, and everyone knew it. When he spoke, others listened. "Emperor Kalos speaks the truth," Voss said. "The last human world has been destroyed. Their final fleet has been crushed. The species that dared to fight us for 50,000 years is now extinct." A hologram appeared above the platform. It showed a blue and green planet being torn apart by massive weapons. Fire covered the surface until nothing was left but rocks and dust. The senators watched with satisfaction as the planet died. "This was their last stronghold," Voss continued. "We found them hiding in the far edge of the galaxy. They called it New Hope. Now it is nothing but space dust." More cheers filled the room. Chancellor Thex, a tall creature with silver skin and 6 eyes, walked to the platform. She carried a large book made of metal pages. "The galactic records have been updated," she announced. "All mention of human achievements has been removed." Their so-called discoveries will now be credited to proper species. Their chaotic ideas about freedom and individual rights have been deleted from our libraries. Kalos smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Humans were a mistake of evolution. They could not understand order. They could not accept their place in the natural way of things. They fought when they should have bowed. They questioned when they should have obeyed. The Emperor's voice grew louder. They spread dangerous ideas wherever they went. They told other species they could choose their own leaders. They said beings had rights that governments could not take away. They believed in something they called democracy. Disgusted sounds came from the audience. Democracy was a dirty word in the Galactic Senate. It meant chaos. It meant weakness. It meant letting the wrong people make decisions. But we are stronger, Kalos continued. We have shown the galaxy what happens to those who will not submit. Let this be a lesson to any who might follow their path. Admiral Voss activated another hologram. This one showed human cities burning, ships exploding in space, millions of people running in terror before being wiped out by hegemony weapons. It took us 50,000 years, Voss said. But we never gave up. Humans were like a disease. Every time we thought we had killed them all, more appeared. They hid in asteroids. They lived in the empty space between stars. They even built homes inside gas giants where no sane being would go. They were like cockroaches, added Chancellor Thex. Hard to kill and impossible to reason with. But cockroaches can be exterminated if you are patient enough. The senators laughed at this. It was funny to compare the once proud human species to bugs. Emperor Kalos walked to a special desk at the front of the platform. On it was a document that would change galactic history. The paper was made from the skin of creatures from his home world. The ink was mixed with rare metals from a dozen planets. I now sign the extinction decree, he announced. From this day forward, humanity never existed. Their homeworld, Earth, will be listed as a failed experiment. Their history will be forgotten. Their names will be erased. Kalos picked up the signing tool. It was carved from the bone of the last creature that had tried to resist the hegemony before humans came along. He pressed it to the paper and made his mark. The room erupted in celebration again. Lights flashed. Music played. Some senators danced in their seats. Others shot fireworks from their bodies. The greatest threat to galactic order was finally gone. The galaxy is now perfect, Kalos declared. Every being knows their place. Every world follows our laws. Every system pays its taxes and provides its resources. The age of chaos is over. The age of true civilization has begun. But far away, beyond the edge of the galaxy where no stars shone, something else was happening. In a place called the Void Between Galaxies, a massive space station floated in the darkness. It was hidden by technology the hegemony had never seen. Its hull was black as space itself and its lights were dim so no one could spot it from far away. This station had a name. Sanctuary. Inside Sanctuary, in a room filled with screens and blinking lights, Commander Lee Day watched the celebration on his monitor. His dark eyes showed no emotion as he listened to Emperor Kalos speak about human extinction. Lee Day was a tall man with short black hair and scars on his face from old battles. He wore a simple uniform with no fancy decorations. He had been fighting the hegemony for most of his life, and he had gotten very good at it. Behind him, other humans worked at their stations. They were the last of their kind. 100,000 people who had escaped the final attack on New Hope. 100,000 people who were supposed to be dead. "Sir," said a young woman at one of the computers, "should we respond to the broadcast?" Lee Day was quiet for a long moment. On the screen, Emperor Kalos was still celebrating. The alien senators were still cheering. They thought they had won. "Not yet," Lee Day finally said. "Let them enjoy their victory party. Let them think they are safe. We have waited 50,000 years for our chance. We can wait a little longer." He turned away from the screen and looked out a window into the black space around them. Somewhere out there, the galaxy continued to live under hegemony rule. Billions of beings followed orders they never chose to obey. They worked jobs they never wanted. They lived lives they never got to pick, but change was coming. The humans were not extinct. They were just getting started. Besides, Lee Day said with a cold smile, they forgot something important about humans. We are very hard to kill, and we never forget. In the darkness of the void, Sanctuary continued its lonely journey through space, carrying the last hope of freedom in a galaxy that had forgotten what the word meant.